future and their legacy. I was born in Antigua, but went to school in the U.S. My mom was a security guard at Public Works for years. My dad burnt coal out in New Winthrops, near Lamberts. And my grandmother was a teacher at Green Bay School. I've had to return home to help them because the ABLP government won't pay their pensions and Social Security on time. This ABLP government doesn't see the effects of the cost of living on senior citizens in this country. Well, my folks have a voice, and they have made their choice. The United Progressive Party is the right choice for their future and their legacy. In 2014, the ABLP promised us water within 14 days. 8 years, we're still waiting for at least a trickle in our pipes. We are told we can get water to take at least a shower a day. But what about drinking, cooking, cleaning? Water is essential for living. Tell this government that we want water, and we want it now. In 2014, the ABLP promised us water within 14 days. 8 years, we're still waiting for at least a trickle in our pipes. We are told we can get water to take at least a shower a day. But what about drinking, cooking, cleaning? Water is essential for living. Tell this government that we want water, and we want it now.
Tune in to the Captain's Corner, a weekly discussion with the political leader of the United Progressive Party, Harold Lovell. Housing is key to increasing economic mobility, and this Thursday at 8:30 p.m. he will discuss how the UPP will empower the people through greater access to affordable housing and land ownership. There will be a special guest each week to add to these important conversations. Listen via Progressive 107.3 FM, Observer Radio, and any UPP social media channel, and pose your questions. Captain's Corner, bringing light and truth.
It's time to join the family at the People's Cooperative Credit Union Limited. We offer savings accounts, deposits, fixed deposits, loans, among other related services. You can even become a shareholder by purchasing a minimum of 50 shares at $5 per share. Membership is super easy and convenient. Just visit our newly opened credit union building on Upper Newgate Street, Monday to Fridays, 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. with proof of ID and address, along with $15 to cover registration and passbook. And you'll be set and on your way. For further information, call 462-8888 or 727-2285. People's Cooperative Credit Union Limited. Today, tomorrow, together.
Our Prime Minister and our team, they have performed in two-thirds, close to 4 years they have performed. Since we won the election in 2014, there have been nothing but all positive. Nobody can identify one scandal.
You wouldn't believe me, but if a lie asked me good friend Mackie, it was a big lying competition to see who they will crown as lying champion. Liars from all parts of the West Indies, big shot liars from all them foreign countries, from a feel about 1,000 or so entry.
I was born in Antigua, but went to school in the US. My mom was a security guard at Public Works for years. My dad burnt coal out in New Winthrops, near Lamberts. And my grandmother was a teacher at Green Bay School. I've had to return home to help them because the ABLP government won't pay their pensions and Social Security on time. This ABLP government doesn't see the effects of the cost of living on senior citizens in this country. Well, my folks have a voice, and they have made their choice. The United Progressive Party is the right choice for their future and their legacy. 2014, the ABLP promised us water within 14 days. 8 years, we're still waiting for at least a trickle in our pipes. We are told we can get water to take at least a shower a day. But what about drinking, cooking, cleaning? Water is essential for living. Tell this government that we want water, and we want it now. I was born in Antigua, but went to school in the US. My mom was a security guard at Public Works for years. My dad burnt coal out in New Winthrops, near Lamberts. And my grandmother was a teacher at Green Bay School. I've had to return home to help them because the ABLP government won't pay their pensions and Social Security on time. This ABLP government doesn't see the effects of the cost of living on senior citizens in this country. Well, my folks have a voice, and they have made their choice. The United Progressive Party is the right choice for their future and their legacy.
Interactive, and a whole new vibe. It's the new season of the Captain's Corner with Harold Lovell, political leader of the United Progressive Party. A refreshing and interactive program highlighting current issues affecting everyone in Antigua and Barbuda. Join us via social media forums and be a part of the conversation. It's the Captain's Corner, bringing light and truth.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of the Captain's Corner. I am Sean Nicholas, and I have with me the Captain, Harold Lovell. Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, good to see you. And joining us for the first part of the program, we have Brother Alistair Thomas. Good evening to you, my good brother.
Good evening. Good evening.
Okay. Brother Alistair is here because for the first part of the program, we'll be focusing on housing and lands. And Brother Alistair, being the party spokesperson for that area, we'll be engaging him quite a bit to hear his views as he espouses the party's position where that is concerned. But I just want to say first a very special welcome to those of you who have joined us via Facebook, via YouTube, or traditional media, those on Progressive 107.3 FM, good evening to you. And for those who have joined via Observer Radio 91.1 FM, a very special good evening. And remember, invite your friends, your families, co-workers, neighbors, everyone to log on or tune in and be part of Captain's Corner for this evening, because there is so much that we want to get out this evening. But before we get into our topic, I'd like to ask for for opening comments. How are you, Captain?
Good.
What's up, Captain?
Right. No, the energy is really good. This afternoon, we were at the farmers market with the pull-up combined, supporting our dear sister, Cleon. She was doing her thing out there in Falmouth, and we know that St. Paul seat is in trouble for the Labour Party. That's coming UPP's way.
Okay.
Energy is really good.
Okay. What about you, Brother Alistair? Welcome to the corner.
Welcome. Thanks very much to be here, and it's my pleasure. And let me say good night to all the viewers and listeners wherever they are. It's my pleasure, and I hope at the end of the evening that we'll have more people on board supporting, campaigning, voting for the rescue of this nation and for the future generation. We owe it to them.
Okay, good. And I just want to say a special thank you to some small business people, as you spoke about it just now, to Anero Delicacies. I hope I got it right. We've been treated to some niceties. We have some sweet treats and some drinks. I'm told that the one is called Plotterland. I don't know if we can get something. We have the Plotterland and Piece of the Rock. So those are our sweet treats for tonight. And then we have the drinks. We have the Recession Buster, the one that looks almost like the ginger beer. That's the Recession Buster. And the sorry looking one, that one is called Get Rid of Them. So we'll be having some treats of Plotterland, Piece of the Rock, and we'll be washing them down with Recession Buster and Get Rid of Them. And of course, we'll be able to say just how delicious they were. So thank you very much to our suppliers. And also, the rug at the back, we want to say a very special thank you to Miss Joanne Lewis. And she's the proprietor of Rugs to Rags. And the piece behind me, she has presented that to be part of our backdrop for this evening. So of course, support small businesses, you know, that's what we do in the UPP. And wherever and however we can support them, we certainly give them the opportunity, so we take the opportunity so to do. So thank you so very much. So before we get on, we're gonna just, you know, small businesses, the pull-ups have been going real well, and you know, whenever we have the opportunities, and we want to extend an invitation as well for those other small businesses who might have products that you want us to
one that you cannot forget.
Yes.
Janet Henry for the props on the set.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes, certainly.
So we really have to say thanks, you know, for
in all
the
her,
yes.
In all of her collection, she was able to make sure that we bring it out and be part of our setup here for tonight.
Yes,
so thank you so very much, Sister Janet Henry, for providing us with the props for this evening. Okay, so we're gonna get into the discussion, and first off, national housing, and not national housing, but the whole issue of housing and lands. The party's position. Let's start there, Captain.
Well, we take the view that housing, affordable housing, is absolutely critical at this time where there are just too many houses and homes in Antigua and Barbuda that are desperately in need of upgrade. And we feel that one of the main impediments is that people just simply have a great problem getting onto the housing market and getting onto the home ownership ladder. So our focus is really to see how we can assist our people to get affordable homes. So our main thrust as far as a UPP administration going forward is to afford our people decent housing at rates they can afford. Now, that has not been the case. And so we believe that it's important that we look at the expenditure side of the housing development. Because if you're dealing with housing using taxpayers' money, then that money must be used very carefully, very prudently. Because you have to make sure that if you have money that can build it and only build one. And that is what we are seeing. And I'm saying, and I am absolutely convinced, and this is the party's position, that NAMCO, not NAMCO, sorry, the National Housing Development and Urban Renewal Corporation, that was designed and constructed mainly to see how they could find ways to use taxpayers' money in a way that was not productive for the taxpayers and the nation, but which would bring benefits to individuals who are close to the Prime Minister in terms of the people who would be running national housing. The reason why I say that, there was no reason for national housing to be formed when this administration came in. CHAPA already existed. And on the national housing, the people who were placed on that board were all people who were closely associated with the Prime Minister. And we still cannot see any updated accounts for national housing. We've heard of the amount that they have spent in terms with regard to the construction of homes. We heard the Prime Minister say that each home had a cost overrun of over $150,000. You can imagine a house that you're selling for $300,000 or $400,000, and 150 of that represents a cost overrun. That is ridiculous, and I'm absolutely sure that had that money been given to prudent tradesmen, contractors, and if we gave them that money and said, use that money and build the homes, we would have got twice as many homes as what we actually got. You have people like Willie D, who have the experience. You have people like Birchfield Martin, who has shown that they have a knowledge and an understanding of how to make a $5 into a $20. People like Sir George Ryan. These are people who we need to look at with regard to the example they have shown. You have even my friend Amin M. John. People like him have shown they have the capacity to build. Franklin Bailey from out at Cooks Hill. Charles Weston from down Five Islands. These are people we are saying, when you look at their track record, our policy will be to empower local tradesmen, help them to become contractors, give them good contracts, make certain that they perform, and ensure that the taxpayer will get value for money. And so for us, we will create a national housing agency, a single national housing agency, which will bring together CHAPA and the National Housing Corporation. And at the same time, we will deliver a better product for our people. But I want to ensure that everybody understands, all the workers in particular, we are not going to be dispensing with workers, sending home workers, retrenching workers. That is not our plan at all.
Well, I'm happy that you said that, because when you announced it in your national address several weeks ago, one of the criticisms that came after was that persons who work in these entities, they were told that UPP plans to get rid of them if in fact that you're merging both organizations.
Yes,
you might
so
want to elaborate on
definitely, I want to assure all the workers who are currently employed with National Housing that we have great plans for them. One of the things that we will address early is their rate of pay. We consider it a shame that National Housing has been collecting so much money, and yet, in spite of all that they have collected, they are still underpaying the workers at National Housing. That must be dealt with urgently. And so we're not dealing with sending home. We're dealing with improving the conditions of work, giving workers who are currently with National Housing an opportunity to become self-employed entrepreneurs, giving them a helping hand. They can employ 5 or 6 people, make sure that they become successful in what they're doing. So that's our plan.
Okay. Brother Alistair, as the party's spokesman on housing and lands, let's hear your views in terms of the party's policy on this particular issue.
First, I would say, said good evening already, that it's one of the biggest rip-off of this government of the resources of this country, and I say that I'm going to prove it as we speak, and also a robbery and a deprivation of young people and citizens generally of getting homes. Now let's look at what the Prime Minister said, not what I think, or not what Brother Harold said. The Prime Minister said, without equivocating, without any water in his mouth, that a project, the housing project, was cost overrun in the region of 100 to 200 million. He did not say a million, he didn't say 10 million or 20 million. In any part of the world, let alone 108 square miles with 100,000 people, but you have a housing project. And the Prime Minister admits that, let's take his lowest figure, 100 million. If you take 200 properties at 250,000, it will be somewhere in the region of 400 homes from 100 million that should have been built. People should have been in those homes. So it's not just a rip-off. It is how many people have been deprived. Now, if you go to the higher figure, if he said between 100 and 200 million, you know he is being conservative. And we have to also agree that the Junior Minister of Finance came and supported it by saying, no, yes, not only that it was being a rip-off project, but he said they were burning money with that housing project. So that if we take let's say $175,000 for a house, we're talking about somewhere in the region of 572 homes that should have been built that people should own. In fact, we can do it the other way. If we take what he said to be true, the Prime Minister, that over $100 million to 200 million being cost overrun. Cost overrun really mean corruption, rip-off. That's what cost overrun mean. That you're building a few homes, and the Prime Minister said not 5 million, not 10 million, not 20 million, 100 to 200 million. So that it is, in fact, an opportunity that not only 571, and if we go to 200 million, we're talking about 800 homes at 250,000. If we talk about 100 homes built at 175,000, it's somewhere in the region of about 1,142 homes being deprived because of that rip-off. Now, if we take the rip-off of 1,100 homes, it means that they could have given, instead of the rip-off, they could almost give away those homes. Do you understand?
Yes.
The rip-off, where did that money go? There's no forensic audit. But when you look at what UPP did, because people like to ask what UPP did, what UPP and Harold did as Minister of Finance, for the first time, we're talking about housing, we're talking about construction, beside the fact that, let me make a step back, that one of the most outrageous things that Gaston did to the contractors, or mainly to the construction workers, the steel workers, the steel vendors, the carpenters and masons, was to devalue, reduce the price of their trade. For the first time in about 25 years, after the Savory and St. James, which carried the construction price to a certain height, it was the first time that Gaston, without consultation with the union or the workers, reduced construction workers' rate of pay per day to less, sometimes 25%. So there was a rip-off of the construction workers up to this time, which means that not only they were ripping off, but then the other contractors would say, look, if the government is paying construction workers a price that they were receiving 25 years ago. So there's the rip-off of the construction workers, rip-off of the resources of not depriving hundreds in the thousands. As I gave the breakdown, that if we take what he's saying as correct, and then the Junior Minister of Finance came and doubled down by saying, yes, it is burning of money taking place in this project with no up-to-date forensic accounting. We are saying that they have deprived many thousands of young people and citizens who need homes by this report, by his admission. We did with the CABI program, the UPP, that Harold Lovelace, Minister of Finance, for the first time, provided teachers and many public servants and citizens an opportunity, because of their salary scale, it was difficult for some of them to have the 10% and the collateral. But with the CABI program, the Construct Antigua Barbuda initiative, what that meant, hundreds of people were able to build because Harold Lovelace, Minister of Finance, called in all the interest parties, the bank, the insurance companies, the contractors, the hardware suppliers, and said, look,
we need to provide opportunities of homes to people who need it. Their salary scale or the rate of the salary they get is impossible. Let us all give something. The government is going to give. And all of these people we mentioned gave something in the CABI program. So at the end, people who, I know people who tried for 25, 20 years to get a loan. But with the CABI program, the Construct Antigua and Barbuda initiative, hundreds of people were able to build because the partnership between the government, the insurance companies, the banks, the credit unions, the contractors, allow them now to get a 25% discount. Because when they get the estimates and they go to these different agencies or enterprises, they go to Antigua Masonry Product to get their blocks. They get their percentage because they're part of the initiative of the Construct initiative. Also, in the construction business, you found that the UPP built the most small properties as far as accommodation in the history of this country, over 40. In fact, there are testimonials of people who are saying, look, God bless Harold Lovell, because he provided for the first time, breaking into a niche, a market, that accommodation was really for certain people for years. And in fact, I think one of the testimonials indicated that it was for the first time under Harold Lovell as Minister of Finance of the UPP, that over 40 properties of accommodation, so we got into that business. So I want to say to the people, and in addition, when you take the fact that for construction, a prime minister received over $120 million for construction of low-income home with what we call a grant funding, which is more or less free money. And for the people of Bobi Ali, I want them to hear this. Over 4 years now, he's received, he said it in the budget presentation, that he received over $120 million from China for grant funding for low-income homes, and at least, he said, 50% of that, which is 60 million, am I right, Harold? You multiply it to 162 million EC. He is being afforded to reconstruct or construct homes for Bobi Ali people as we approach the eve of the election. Not one person from Bobi Ali, after Prime Minister Gaston Brown announced in Parliament, he's received over 120 million EC dollars and 60 million. I want to say that with our program, and we're going to outline some of them, where we are going to facilitate, add to the CABI, which is the Construct Antigua and Barbuda initiative. We have programs particularly, of which not only we're focusing with the initiatives to help young people, but we have programs in which, in housing and construction, over 10% of those homes will be allotted to women, to soldiers, to police, to nurses, to health workers. But we'll elaborate as we go on and the program that we implement. So I just wanted to give a backdrop as to what UPP did already.
And in terms of the programs, as you spoke about, Harold, one of the things that we have been talking about since 2018 was the whole idea of a rent to own. Let us talk a little bit about that, and you can come in again, Alistair. What is this rent to own, and how will that enable persons who are seeking to get a home to do so?
Yes, the rent-to-home idea is another way in which the United Progressive Party intends to help persons who are having great difficulty with regard to their ownership aspirations get onto the ownership ladder. We will allow not only the individuals, but we will allow multiple applicants, so that we can have intergenerational wealth being developed. It means that the parents can start living and they're paying the rent, but we will make allowance so that their children can continue paying, and eventually the ownership will come to that family. Now, this is a way in which meaningful assistance will be given to our people. It's not a case where you live under this roof, you're paying rent month after month after month, and you never gain any equity in that property. You never gain any ownership standard in that property. Well, we're going to change that so that you become an owner eventually. Similar to how you do a fridge or washing machine. down at any one of these stores, whether it be Courts or wherever, where you pay little by little and you own it in part and then in whole. That's what we'll do with the rent to own, so that you live in the property, you pay your rent, and eventually it becomes your own. And it can be done from an intergenerational standpoint, meaning one generation can go into another and maintain that ownership. So rent to own is very important as far as ownership is concerned.
And of course, all goes to making it more accessible to more. Brother Alistair, do you wish to comment?
And I want to see if I can wrap a bow around it. It's not only we're going to build homes. In this so-called housing scheme, a rip-off, that's what it is. When you look at anything $100 million rip-off, we are building communities. This new approach that we're taking, and when I say build communities, in this rip-off project, there is not one single house that was being built particularly designated for the disabled. In our housing construction and building, we are building first communities where you're going to have social areas. In those areas that we have space. We build a new area, you cannot build a modern housing and don't have social areas. People want to go out to walk, the older people to walk with a walking stick, with their walkers, with a wheelchair, with the battery operated chairs. So you go down a little area and there are lazy benches. That's a modern community. In addition to that, there might be some exercise pieces. But one of the areas we're going to focus in is what we call the disabled or disability friendly housing. Not that you build a house, and because you did not integrate the consideration of having the different needs of people in the community. With these houses will not have to be retrofit. We'll be building the homes for the disability-friendly community by ensuring the size of doors, the walkway, the kitchen counters will be at the height. The area they're going to put maybe the electrical stove, so that instead of a person getting disabled, especially if they can use their upper body, we are going to build homes that for the first time will provide for them in the environment. It will be friendly in every way. It will be accessible, that you could use a battery-operated chair or your wheelchair and move around the house. If somebody's away, the counters or the tabletop, the sink area is made to the height that can fit the chairs, where your wheelchair or your battery-operated chair can go, help take you there. So that it is a complete package we're looking at. Communities, but at the same time, the options that we are providing as far as the program with grant, First Owners Grant, which we'll explain in a little more detail, which is you are going to an institution and you may not have the funding to do the deposit. We'll provide with that First Owner Grant.
And I think we could go there now, and I think you're referring to the Buyer Assist program, is that it?
Yes.
So perhaps we can talk a little bit more about the Buyer Assist program.
Because we're looking at several pathways. One pathway, as I mentioned, is the rent to own. The other pathway, especially for first-time homeowners, in fact, we're going to tailor-make this for first-time homeowners. It will be tailor-made for them. The big problem, as Alistair was mentioning, is that when a lot of people, a lot of young persons especially, go to the bank, they have great difficulty finding that deposit. And without the deposit, it's almost impossible to get a mortgage. We will make it easy to get that deposit by making available for first-time homeowners a grant, and that grant will go towards the deposit. In other words, we will assist first-time homeowners with that Buyer Assist grant. And with that Buyer Assist grant, once they can now qualify for a full mortgage, then that will assist them, and that in turn will help to build the home ownership stock, getting our people into owning their own homes. So this is another very innovative way that we will assist our people in helping them to make the deposit so that they can approach the bank and they can get a mortgage which will allow them to own their own home, but outside of the regular government financing mechanism, but rather You can get it through the commercial bank who are doing the funding for the mortgage, but the government would assist you with a grant which would allow you to have your deposit to get your mortgage.
Okay.
So this is another very practical, very innovative step towards assisting our people with home ownership.
And if I may add that we had already negotiated, Brother Harold and the UPP in the last administration before they lost, an initiative that would have been in full flight, which was with the Bow panel, for the same reasons, that we recognize that there are hundreds of young people frustrated, can't find that collateral, can't find that deposit. And what the UPP came up with, in fact, there were about 200 applicants being approved, was to provide the land as the collateral, as the 10%, so that all would have been negotiated, would have been the salary and the size of home. That was already done. So I'm just saying on a backdrop, and those agreements had already been signed and agreed to. The government came in and abandoned it. I think it was Mr. Lake says, you know, they're abandoning that. But it's because the consistency I'm showing you of the United Progressive Party with the new options, the several options, because in this new option, it's not only single home, family home. We're thinking of condo, apartments, villas, single, smaller homes. Let me give examples of smaller home. You have many of the senior citizens who reach a certain age. Their family, their husband might have died or the wife might have died, and they live in a 4 or 5 bedroom home. We are now fine-tuning a policy in which, look, many of them would be satisfied of living in a smaller home. They can't maintain that large home, where we could negotiate with them and says, look, they come to a value system and they want a smaller home where it's more comfortable for them to operate. They don't only want 1 bedroom. But we would have negotiated with them. So there's multiple of options for the young people as far as the grant program, as far as assisting them in developing their designs. It is a multiple package, but we are going to emphasize communities, creating communities that is modern, with social environment, that we not only build houses, build housing stock, and you have people isolated. We want to rebuild communities where children, young people, the senior citizens will be provided for.
Rebuilding communities is what it's all about. But we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back. Just to remind the audience, if you wish to get in touch or get in on the conversation, you can send us a WhatsApp at 789-268-789-1073. Or you can, make a note on the My UPP page, or visit us on our website, www.voteupp.com. And we'll be sure to read your messages or your questions, concerns here on the Captain's Corner. We're going to take a break and then we'll be right back.
I was born in Antigua, but went to school in the U.S. My mom was a security guard at Public Works for years. My dad burnt coal out in New Winthrops, near Lamberts. And my grandmother was a teacher at Green Bay School. I've had to return home to help them because the ABLP government won't pay their pensions and Social Security on time. This ABLP government doesn't see the effects of the cost of living on senior citizens in this country. Well, my folks have a voice, and they have made their choice. The United Progressive Party is the right choice for their future and their legacy.
And we say welcome back to the Captain's Corner. The captain is joined by Brother Alistair Thomas, the party's spokesman on housing and lands. We spent quite a bit of time before the break talking about housing, But let's focus on lands, Brother Alistair. Let's talk about the party's position.
I would say within the first 30 days, we intend to introduce or have in place an independent forensic audit of all lands. Because we are satisfied that a lot of shenanigans have been taking place with the lands. Apart from that, our focus, because when we look around, and anyone drive around can see it, there's a kind of callous disregard for holistic development. Certainly this government is not thinking that. We would have thought that coming out of COVID, where in the early months we saw the reality where import almost came to a halt, that boats coming in, bringing in, whether from the neighboring islands or from North America. And we would have thought a responsible government would say, you know, now is the time to really allocate agricultural land, be it livestock, be it vegetables or fruit crops. No, you've seen a total wanton disregard, as if they can't wait to give away all the land. So in our first 6 months to a year, we are going to emphasize, because you must be able to feed yourself, though we're speaking about development. We want to create, we will be creating that balance, that lands that are agricultural, not only, and another time we will emphasize the kind of agriculture program, but first is going to be a first independent forensic audit to know what is the status of our lands, because we are not certain. There are many secret deals. For instance, you look at the EIDA agreement, many people may not be aware. The Prime Minister in that agreement signed away our $1 billion resource, the sea area of our country in the EIDA agreement. And it's an indefinite agreement. And anyone who understands the ocean or the blue economy. So that for us, we are going to deal with first the audit, but simultaneously we are looking at housing, commercial areas, and agricultural areas. And we want to put in law that one would not interfere with agricultural lands, because we need to be in a position where we, regardless of the circumstances, COVID, whether it's whatever it is, we must be able to at least feed ourselves for a certain period of time.
Mm-hmm. I know our time on this topic is limited, but we cannot talk about land, Brother Harold, and not focus on two target areas. Firstly, our farmers, and secondly, the youth. What is the party's position in terms of land and farming, and land and the youth?
Yes, we will approach the farmers with a view to allowing our farmers to have proper leases of 25 years. Mm-hmm. We want to give our farmers that security of tenure so that they know they have a lease which is in the long term. We will also allow our farmers to build on the land that is leased, but to monitor it. Because the idea is not for somebody to take farmlands and then they just use it as their dream home. The idea is that the land and the building will go with the farm. Mm-hmm. Because we want to build a secure farming community where the farming community feels a sense of protection in terms of the estate on the land, and don't think that every year or every other year somebody's going to be coming from the Ministry of Agriculture to seek to evict them. Mm-hmm. So we want to give the farmers security of tenure, and that will come through extended leases and the right to build on those properties so that they can protect their properties and their produce from predator larceny. As far as young people are concerned, we have already indicated that we'll be setting aside a portion of any development that takes place for young people. And we will sell young people land at a concessionary rate so that those who have never been able to own a piece of the rock, we will give them an opportunity to own a piece of the rock by selling the land at a concessionary price. Mm-hmm. This is something that we look forward to doing, so that we can really get our young people into land ownership and home ownership.
Mm-hmm. Brother, yes?
Yeah, I just want to close. It'd be remiss of me not to speak to my constituency, mm-hmm. though, you know, I'm speaking of the national issue.
Yes.
I feel ashamed. I feel disgraced. I feel humiliated, as the constituents keep telling me. Poynton Villa has never looked so abandoned, so derelict
having a representative for 22 years, but when you look at the housing stock, when you look at, there's none. But so first I want to say to the people of Booby Alley, we will definitively address your housing concern. Because if there's the grant, which the Prime Minister says, as long as the money is there, we will resolve that issue. First, though, I want to guarantee them, I'll call all the Booby Alley residents together and establish a binding agreement where the government makes a commitment of time of construction, their ownership, who would own what. There is no such thing. So I just want to assure my constituents that as far as the Booby Alley, your issue with the United Progressive Party, Harold as Prime Minister, and the Redeem team in power, that is going to be a problem of the past. We're going to solve that problem. But in addition, overall, the housing stock, and with the programs we're talking about, some of the community building where we'll have the lift system in a kind of way, provide the lots or those who already have homes, how we'll help them to modernize. You can't have a society not thinking of upgrading the quality. Pride and dignity is a part of your surrounding. So I want to assure the people, and in other areas, that with a housing project and with the many options we are providing for government workers, public servants, citizens overall, and young people in particular, it's not if, but, or maybe. The only choice in this redemption of rebuilding and building new communities, interconnected communities, social communities, communities and housing for disability and for every sector of our society. With the United Progressive Party, with Alistair Thomas, with the Redeem team, we are going to transform these communities and make the members of these communities proud again with the appearance, with the surrounding, with the environment. We are shamed in almost every community after $11 billion, after 200 million, as the Minister Weston says, burnt. We can't see it. But with the United Progressive Party, after the kind of investigation, we will simultaneously transform with a different housing and construction option. So we want to say to the people, we, with you, will transform housing in Antigua for a place that we all will be proud of.
And thank you very much, Brother Alistair, for joining us on the corner. Thanks for your inputs in terms of housing and lands and the UPP's plans going forward.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's an appetizer.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we will continue with the captain, but we'll be going into another segment. So do stay tuned. And for those who haven't joined, please call them and ask them to join. The Captain Corner is on. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
And we say welcome back to the Captain's Corner. Brother Alistair was with us talking about housing and lands. But Captain, you wanted to make one final point.
There is one issue when it comes to housing and lands and the Upper Fort Road area.
Yes.
Now, St. John City East is geographically the smallest constituency. And there's not a lot of available land. However, it's one of those communities where most of the lands are leased lands. Remember, those were sugarcane lands many years ago. And the people who live in Fort Road, who have come to inhabit Fort Road, are living mainly on leased plots of land. And it creates an uncomfortable situation, mainly for the landlord as well as the tenants. It's just one of those situations that must be sorted. And I'm committed that given the opportunity, we will transform that community by acquiring those leased lands, because I've spoken to the main owners of the lands in Fort Road. And we will acquire, as far as possible, those lands in the Upper Fort Road area so that people can buy the land at concessionary rates and own the lands, and then we as a UPP administration will help them to build new homes on the land. Now, this is very doable because with all the programs that we've been talking about, in terms of acquisition, because we did it as a UPP administration, right in that Upper Fort Road, Lower Gambles area, we acquired lands in 2009 and gave ownership to the people who now live on those lands. And we can do it again because it's a matter of speaking with the owners, and sometimes you can't pay with cash because in the circumstances that we did in 2009, it was an exchange, it was a land swap. And we were able to give the landowner an alternative piece of land so that they could enjoy an alternative piece whilst allowing the residents on the leased land to have their own plot of land. So that's something that will be done so that we, in turn, with the National Housing Agency, will be able to help our people to not only own the land, but to build a new home or to repair the existing home on the current land.
Okay. We are coming off the housing and lands topic, but there's a question that has been on the board for quite a bit, and it asks, what about a sliding scale for senior citizens with regards to housing and land ownership?
Well, that's a good idea. It's an idea that I suppose it positions our senior citizens in a way that they pay on the basis of their ability, based on their means. We will look at significant or different options for senior citizens. Senior citizens who are already in a home, for example, or living in a house, how do we assist them maybe to complete the ownership if they're paying a mortgage? If it is that they're paying rent, we offer them the opportunity that we offer to others as well, rent to own, with the opportunity for intergenerational succession, whereby maybe the senior citizen might be the person who will be the first to live, but their rent will go towards the ownership of a succeeding generation, the children and the grandchildren. And to look at the issue of paying on the basis of your ability to pay. It's an idea that needs to be considered. I'm not going to make a full commitment as far as that is concerned, but certainly it is an idea that is worth considering.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to shift focus, and I want to look at some issues that have been current in the news and in the news field. And just as we were on our way here tonight, we got the news, the breaking news of 2 resignations from the Democratic National Alliance. I'm not sure if you'd want to comment on that at this time.
Well, I don't want to interfere, obviously, in the affairs of the Democratic National Alliance. But what I would say is that, you know, when we lost Bruce and Maleka, I think it was a loss to the party. And now that they have decided to leave the DNA, I just want to send a very clear signal and a very strong message that the doors of the United Progressive Party remain open for both Maleka and Bruce. And whatever it is that they decide to do, I would just like them to know that we need to build a strong, united force against the Gaston Brown administration. Whilst we remain divided, the Gaston Brown cabal are very happy. In fact, it is in their interest to keep us divided. So the fact that Bruce and Maleka have decided to part ways with the DNA, I want to say that I hope that this will signal the beginning of a process of renewal so that we can build a united force and a strength to fight the Antigua Labour Party and not have the splintered approach that we currently have. So I just want to say to both Maleka and Bruce, we are here and our doors are open, and let's fight together in order to win this battle against the Gaston Brown dictatorship.
So some interesting days ahead, I would imagine. But as we talk about resignations, I think there was a strategy by the Prime Minister earlier in the week or over the weekend when he started hinting that there might be defections coming out of the UPP. What are your thoughts on that, if at all? You have
well, I was asked to comment on that by a reporter. And I said to the reporter, apart from Gaston Brown, who else would believe that utter rubbish? After I spoke as well, Brother Sherfield Bowen, he really took it in very few words. He said the Prime Minister probably needs to take his meds. And I agree with him. That type of crazy talk is really just an attempt to take attention away from the failings of the Antigua Labour Party. We heard also from Brother Sean Bird. And Brother Sean Bird made it plain. Why would he at this stage, when victory is assured in the St. John's Rural East constituency, as in the case of Brother Sherfield Bowen, why would they look to leave, even think of leaving at a time like this? So it's rubbish. We were going to ignore it. But there were some people who came up and they seemed genuinely concerned. They wanted me to tell them, is it true? What is it that they hear? And I had to tell them, look, let not your heart be troubled. That is a desperate Prime Minister who probably didn't take his meds, his Risperdal. And so when he doesn't take his Risperdal, he tends to go off the wire and talk a lot of foolishness, as old people say, talk out his head. And so he probably just threw that out because he wasn't quite focused. And then when he's talking about two others. But what he said, which was highly disingenuous, and where he tried to completely twist an existing situation to give the wrong impression. And I want to deal with it because it's a double jeopardy that the person he's referring to has to endure. He's referring to a case with Brother Tavon Harriet. Now, you might have heard him say that Brother Tavon Harriet has visited his office. Yes, he has. And on each occasion that Brother Tavon Harriet has visited the Prime Minister's office, he informs me. And then he will brief me after he has met with the Prime Minister. But he meets not only with the Prime Minister, or has met not only with the Prime Minister, he's had to meet with the Accountant General. He's had meetings with the Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance, namely Lennox Weston. And you may wonder why. Why has he been walking and meeting with the Accountant General, the Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance, and the Minister of Finance, Gaston Brown? It is because the company started by Tavon Harriet's father, Competitive Security, is owed by this wicked administration $4.2 million. $4.2 million is not in dispute. It's not as though they're saying we don't believe the money is owed. Or something has to be reconciled. All of that has already been done. They refuse to pay Tavon Harriet and his father the money that is owed. $4.2 million. Can you imagine that? Now, which small business can absorb a debt of $4.2 million? So the company had to go out of existence. And then you have people now running down Tavon and his father for payments, naturally, severance and other things. But the main client of Competitive Security is the government, or was the government, and refuses to pay them. Just refuses to pay them. And it's just despicable the way this administration has behaved. Pure political victimization. Because they suspected at the time that the Harriets were supporters of the United Progressive Party. They've refused to pay them. Simply refused to pay them. And Tavon has had to go to the Accountant General and beg, the Minister of State and beg, and the Prime Minister and beg for his money. the money that they have worked for, that they're owed. It is disgraceful. And then, for the Prime Minister to insinuate that there's a UPP candidate who has visited his office. Of course, he's visited his office. He's visited his office hoping that your heart, which is made of stone, will soften in some way so that you will allow the company to get something that is owed by government. We are saying to this government, what you're doing is wicked. What you're doing is heartless. Pay Tavon Harriet and his father their money. Pay them their money. Talking about economic powerhouse and government doing so well. And you can't pay anybody. You owe everybody. And a few people in a small circle are the ones who are getting all the money. And others, because of their political beliefs and their political persuasion, they are victimized in a heartless and cruel manner. And we say shame on this government and shame on Gaston Brown owing the people money and then trying to twist it to make it seem as though he's coming to talk to Gaston Brown in his capacity as political leader of the Labour Party. I say to him, as I've said before, this country is in grave danger once we have a Prime Minister who does not take his medication. He's supposed to take Risperdal. And notice I've spoken about it several times. He's talked about everything else, but he won't touch this because it's the truth. And I have no issues when it comes to mental health matters because I understand. As part of my law program, I did a special program and course, and I understand the sensitivities. I understand that this is an issue that has to be dealt with very carefully because mental illness is for anybody. Like cancer, like heart attack, like anything, it's for anybody. So I am not one of these people who's going to laugh at people if they may have any issues to do with mental health. I am not in that. I understand the issues. I get it. But when somebody is the Prime Minister of a country and they're required to take medication in order to stabilize their psychological and psychiatric state, and they refuse to take, or they are reluctant to take, or it appears as though they are not taking, that's a very serious matter because that then becomes a national security issue for Antigua and Barbuda. And that's why I'm saying some of the things you hear him saying sound so irrational and unreasonable, anybody would conclude that he has not taken his meds and he needs to take them.
I want to go back to the point when you spoke about not paying suppliers. I think what we find now is because suppliers are owed, the old suppliers are owed, and they go looking for new suppliers. I mean, what does that mean for us taxpayers? I take, for example, we had the case of Special Security Services that was called out to do security services for government. And of course, the money that was paid, where are we now with school security? So let's talk a little bit about, you know, the cost that it is to us, the taxpayers.
Right. Now, on two levels. Let's deal with security, and then we can deal with other services. But when you deal with security, you look at the break-ins that took place with several schools, and they had to call in special security. This is what we heard on the news. And just recently, in fact, I think it was today I heard on the news that the number of break-ins at schools has gone down dramatically since they have been able to put some new security measures in place. But they owed competitive security, and my intelligence tells me that they also owed other major security providers, including, as I said, special security. I don't know that for a fact because whereas Tavon Harriet told me that they owed $4.2 million, I have not had any conversation with special security, so I do not know
but I think
what
that was the reason why they withdrew.
Yes. Well, one and one make two, and you don't have to be born big, so common sense is there. So we understand that this broke administration that has completely mismanaged this country, they haven't paid the security providers, you have break-ins in the school, and you have them penalizing persons who are owed money for political reasons. Now, that's one of the costs, or one of the effects of not paying. But in terms of where they can't meet their bills, you take, for example, at the school meals program. They can't go into anybody's shop. School meals can't go into anybody's shop. Nobody will give them credit. They won't recognize their vouchers. So they have to rely on a merchant in town to do all of their shopping. Now, I don't know what the merchant charges, but I'm saying he's a businessman. He or she is a businessman, a business person. And people are in business with a view to making a return on their investment. But that is only one case. But you look at several other areas where work is being done, and it is being done by persons who are doing it because the government does not have the money to do it, so they will front the money and then overcharge the government when the time comes because they have to be paid for the service that they're providing. Now, all of this is a cost to the taxpayer. We need to run the country properly so that the money that is allocated for capital projects, whether it be roads or whatever, we utilize it in that way. And I can say, this government has collected more money than any previous administration. But the more money they collect is the more money that they want. And the time for a change is now, because it is costing the taxpayers of this country gravely. And it is our children and our children's children who are going to have to pay it back.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll continue this discussion right after the break. So stay tuned. Remember, you can send your questions to us via WhatsApp 789-1073, or you can send it via post on the MyUPP Facebook page. We'll be right back after this break.
In 2014, the ABLP promised us water within 14 days. 8 years, we're still waiting for at least a trickle in our pipes. We are told we can get water to take at least a shower a day. But what about drinking, cooking, cleaning? Water is essential for living. Tell this government that we want water, and we want it now.
We're entering our final half hour. So for those of you on radio, Progressive 107.3 FM, and on Observer Radio 91.1 FM, we thank you for staying with us, and I hope you stay with us until 10. Mr. Lovell, one of the things that, or one of the concerns that we hear, whereas the Prime Minister is busy engaging in all these discussions, attacking even deflections, whatever it is that he's doing, the concern is that the number of projects that were proposed, we are waiting yet to see a lot of them come to fruition. There's also the whole issue of high unemployment, and these issues, among others, that the Prime Minister and his government should be focusing their attention on?
Of course. And the thing is, he should be looking and focusing on how to address these issues. He has something like 28 failed projects. I mean, how many other administrations can point to the fact that they announced 28 projects in their national budget statements? So we're not talking about things that he may have just mentioned along the way or another minister may have just stated as a hope or a wish. We're talking about documented projects which would have been taken into account by some of the international agencies that would be looking at the budget statement presented by the Minister of Finance, and they will take them seriously because serious countries are expected to present a statement which realistically speaks to what is going to happen in the upcoming fiscal year. So he announces 28 projects in the 8 years that he's been around, and not one single project has come off the ground of the 28. It's a failure. And the quicker he recognizes that he has failed the people of this country and stop forming the fool on Facebook and get down to governing the country, that's what we need. You have 28 failed projects and you up and down the place forming the fool on Facebook. You have work to do.
In the corporate world, and you were to do a performance appraisal, you'll be fired a long time ago.
You'd be fired. They would ask you 28 projects.
They would not have allowed you to reach the 28.
They would not have allowed you to reach 28.
Yes.
So he's a failure.
Yes.
And the facts are there for all to see that the government has failed to fulfill the promises that they made. More investments, we're not seeing more investments. More jobs, we're not seeing more jobs. And less taxes. And in fact, what has happened is that they increased the consumption tax, but that's a hidden tax, so a lot of people don't see that. But they increased the consumption tax substantially on gasoline. We're paying like an extra $5 and $6 per gallon on gas and diesel. That was an increase in taxes. All the other charges and fees have gone up. Work permit fees have doubled. If you want to get anything done in the court, it's a massive amount of money you have to pay. For example, if you go for a probate, just for the account that you have to file, that's $1,000. $1,000. I mean, people complain about that all the time. And so if you're doing a probate matter, you have to explain to people, look, this $1,000 is not lawyer fee. Is the government getting this $1,000? But I can assure the people of Antigua and Barbuda, that is pure wickedness. Pure wickedness. And that will be removed. That will be removed. And when we talk about removing some of those taxes, which I can come to in a minute if you wish, I will show where the impact is not going to be that great in terms of the impact on the finances, but the impact will be great in terms of the incentivizing that it will provide for sections of the economy.
Okay. We do ask people to submit their questions. This one has been there for a while. It's not related to what we're talking about, but we asked for the question, so we'll read it. And it came in via WhatsApp. It says, good night, Mr. Lovell. There are a lot of young people like me who wish to become pilots, but can't because of high cost of obtaining such a skill. Is there anything that you can probably look at to help us along this journey?
Okay. Now, traditionally, you don't generally see scholarships being given for pilots. But as you say, it's an important skill that's needed. Now, what normally happens is that persons would obtain student loans because the assumption is that pilots work for a lot of money. So that once you are able to get a job, then you will be able to repay the student loan. So to me, it's worth looking into expanding the scope of the scholarship base, whereby the Board of Education may want to look into pilots as one area that we may want to assist. Other than that, it would have to be assistance with regard to providing a guarantee so that the person can get a student loan which can be repaid, but at the moment they may not have the collateral in order to allow them to get the loan. So I can see a government coming in to help so that you help with maybe the guarantee for the loan, the person would get the loan and then they repay the loan. So I think there are a number of options, but very few countries will offer scholarships for pilots. It's normally self-financed so that persons get the job after they've qualified and then they repay the loan based on their income.
Okay, let's take this next question. In your opinion, as a former Minister of Finance, how is Antigua being able to borrow so many 80-plus loans if the government of the day states there is no money?
Well, there is no money, and so they've just been borrowing. The question, as we've stated over and over again, is not so much the revenue, the bringing in the money. Our issue has been the spending of the money, and that's where the controls need to be placed so that money is spent wisely. This government has defied every form of logic. How is it that they have had so much money to spend and yet they're more broke than any administration has ever been before? No administration has owed so many people so much money. So few people owe so many so much. That is a crying shame and a burning disgrace. So as far as we're concerned, that is an issue that has to be addressed.
Okay, and it's not just borrowing money. Some of the monies that are borrowed is not known to the public.
Not known to the public because we're hearing about this 200 million. We still do not know the terms of that loan. We do not even know the lender. Where in the world you hear a government talking about borrowing up to 200 million US dollars, and up to now, they have not disclosed the name of the lender. Who is Antigua getting into bed with? Who are we borrowing this money from? Why is it that this Gaston Brown government cannot go to any reputable financial institution and borrow any money? How is it that you cannot see any reputable financial institution lending this administration money? They came last year, July. They said they borrowed 200 million. It's in the estimate. Then they came back a year later, more than a year later, to say, in fact, it was never borrowed. And yet it is in the estimate stating that it was borrowed. What a shambolic state of affairs we have in this country. These people do not know what they're doing. They're telling you they borrow money and then they come back a year later and tell you, oh, we put it in the estimates as borrowed, a done deal, July 2021, and then they tell you we didn't borrow it. So what can you trust when you see those estimates? What are the numbers you can actually rely on? Where is the truth? Then they came this January and they said, oh, we're going for 200 million, another 200 million. But they said it was oversubscribed. And then in a matter of 2-3 weeks, they then came and said not only was it not oversubscribed, but they're saying that they were going to borrow at 4.5%. And then they're telling us this Nancy story that you sign off on a bond where you agree to pay 4.5%, and then you're telling us that the man wants 9%. So how come you sign off on 4%, and then the man is going to come and tell you 9%, and you're telling this nation that you're so brilliant? Brilliant? That's a height of dunceness. How are you going to sign off at 4.5% on any bond, that's like the loan, over a period of time, and then you come and say, after you've already signed it, it's stupidness he's telling us. Stupidness he's telling us. Now he comes and he says he's going to borrow, I think, at 7%. But we don't know who he's borrowing from. We don't know if it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years. We hear that he's borrowing 200 million. He's going to get it in drips and drabs, as they say, hacks and herrings. He's going to get 160 in his hand. Whilst he's borrowing 200, he's getting 160. Why? Okay, we understand. The interest, they say, is going to be paid up front. But how much in interest is going to be paid? How much will taxpayers have to pay in interest? And what is even more terrible in terms of governance is the fact that how can a government be borrowing money just to splurge before an election? This is not a responsible way to utilize public funds. That you starve the people for 8 years. You keep the people hungry since the pandemic. You give no assistance. And then all of a sudden, you're going to now look to borrow 200 million. And your whole idea of spending that 200 million is just for election purposes. But the die is already cast.
Well, I was going to say time for them to go, one, which you would say. But secondly, the fact that earlier and repeatedly he has said, oh, the Labour Party is going to win 17 seats. But the signs that we're seeing, it shows that it's a party that is in distress and concerned about the next general election. Let me hear your thoughts
You're
on that.
absolutely right with that. When a party is satisfied that they're going to win an election, they call the election date and they go to the election. This government has been threatening to call the election date almost 2 years now. He's been saying he's going to call election. He's going to call election. And he keeps on saying he's going to win all 17 seats. However, nothing in his actions point to somebody who has any confidence that they're going to win the election in terms of majority of seats. Giving away wholesale, APUA, arrears, the whole pandemic passed and they said they couldn't do it. No help for anybody at all during the pandemic. And then all of a sudden, just before the election, they're giving it. Mount St. John's, property tax at Inland Revenue, giving away everything. Then they're going to try to, I suppose, do everything they can just before the election, spend as much money, not because they care about people, but because they're only concerned to give away the whole shop if they have to in order to secure re-election. But we want to say to the people of Antigua and Barbuda, whatever they're giving you, take it. It's yours. Whatever they're giving you, take it. But just understand that their way of operating, they will walk on you for 5 years as they have done. Keep you hungry for 5 years as they have done. Ignore you for 5 years as they have done. Treat you as a dog for 5 years as they have done. And then just before the election, they will come and bring you all these blandishments and inducements. They'll bring you all these things. Do not be fooled. Do not be fooled. Because their view is they don't pay you for the vote. And if they don't pay you for the vote, for 5 years they don't need to bother with you because you already sold your vote to them. I'm saying to you, people of Antigua and Barbuda, this is a very serious period in our history. Let us look to a future whereby we have opportunities for the young, opportunities for the middle-aged, opportunities for business, opportunity for our sportsmen and sportswomen, opportunities for our craftsmen and craftswomen, opportunities to take Antigua in a direction where we build a new economy. This is what we're talking about, really building a new economy where we can provide meaningful jobs and employment for our people and get away from this ALP government that has failed the people with 28 failed projects, providing no new jobs, increasing all the rates and charges, increasing consumption tax on gasoline, bringing more and more hardship to the people. My people, Antigua people, Barbuda people, we need a change in this country. 5 more years, please. We can't take any more of them. Get rid of them. Time for them to go.
You as political leader, you are charged with the responsibility of leading the charge in positioning the United Progressive Party to retake the governance of this country. How do you feel at this point of the campaign in terms of the United Progressive Party being successful at the polls whenever the time comes?
I feel very, very
Let's
comfortable.
talk about that. Yeah.
I feel very comfortable. I feel very confident. I think we've made some right decisions. For example, getting our candidates out there early. A lot of new candidates, and we deliberately did not wait until the last minute. We got our candidates out there early. We made sure that people got to know their candidates, and we allowed all the candidates with the party to bond and develop so that they can articulate the positions of the party with the sort of fluency that we are seeing and we're very comfortable with. Now, a poll was done recently. I can assure you that a poll was done recently. It was not a UPP commissioned poll, but I had the opportunity to see the results of that poll. It was a poll done in 10 constituencies, and of the 10 constituencies that were polled, I'm very happy to say that the UPP is ahead in 7 of those 10 constituencies that were polled. We did another poll just a week ago, just less than 2 weeks ago, and you will hear more about that. But that is another key constituency where the UPP is well ahead. So we are going to win the next election from all the signs.
So we are on upward trajectory.
Definitely. We're not just saying that, but we have the empirical data that supports that. And all the candidates are working very hard. The Labour Party, they're in an absolute tailspin. We're waiting for the so-called red machine to crank up. But I hear they need a new starter. I hear the battery dead, and they need to change the oil filter and all the parts that need adjusting and repair. They're trying to see what they can do. But the latest reports coming to me is that it's a hard start and they're having some serious problems getting the engine rolling. Whatever they do, they can jump high, jump low. They're not winning the next election. The UPP is going to win the next election. People are fed up and people want to change. And we're going to offer that change and bring a better quality of life to the people of Antigua and Barbuda.
And while you say there's empirical evidence, there is that mood that you speak to people daily. You go to places, persons who would not normally speak politics with you, persons who would not normally show colors. There is that genuine feeling and that need. Everyone is crying out for change. And I'm sure you've been getting that as well.
Definitely. Yes. Almost anywhere you go in Antigua, people are saying, we need a change. In fact, a lot of people nowadays, whether you go to the airport, the seaport, the supermarket, wherever you go, people are not even saying if you all get in. The amount of people or the number of people who will come to me and say, when you all get in, this is what I want you all to look at. This is what I want you all to do. And I can assure those persons we won't let them down. We will not let them down. We understand very clearly the mission that we have ahead of us to build a new economy, transform Antigua and Barbuda, and ensure that our young people have opportunities going forward.
Okay. I want to shift just a bit and hope we can come back to that. There's some questions that have been coming in, unrelated, but we'll take them nonetheless. This one on WhatsApp says, let's see that question again. What is the current state of affairs between Yida and Singh and his free trade zone? I guess this is Western Imperial.
Yes. Well, the most I can say about that is Western Imperial came here with no money. They pulled a big con on a gullible, desperate government who wanted to say they were doing something because they had nothing to show. And up to now, we have heard nothing further. We have heard about this man who came boasting about the amount of money that he had, rented properties, he hasn't paid a cent. He walked around promising that he was going to open medical school. Yida, he entered into an arrangement with them. They trusted him. They ended up having to sue him. So just another failure in a string of failures of the Labour Party administration. And as they have become more desperate, they have been scraping the bottom of the barrel. And they've been coming up with these people who come with a lot of big talk, telling them that they have a lot of money, and it turns out that these people have no money and are just making a fool of the Gaston Brown administration, who are just praying and hoping that something will come out of the hat in order to save them.
Okay. There's another question on WhatsApp. This one says about the pensioners. Where is that? What about a raise for senior citizens from the government pension?
Well, yes. That is definitely on the table.
But the last raise was the UPP.
The last raise was the UPP. We've spoken about bringing pensions once again in line with inflation, using our 2007 increase as a benchmark. And once we do that, we will measure what is required, or assess what is required in terms of an increase in pensions. But pensions must be kept in line with inflation. We have made that commitment. We made that commitment many years ago, and we'll stick to that commitment, because the living standards of our pensioners has eroded as a result of the increase in the cost of living. And so you can't keep pensions at the same rate, because medicines don't cost the same, soap and toothpaste don't cost the same, groceries don't cost the same generally, foodstuffs in particular. And so that has to be addressed. It will be addressed in consultation with the Pensioners Association, looking at all the important factors, but the most important factor is the cost of living increase over the years.
Okay, well, we are winding down. We're coming very close to the end, and I just want to say that looking forward, United Progressive Party readying itself, the polls are showing that you are on an upward trajectory. Of course, there's a lot more work to be done. What is the vibe like, and what can people look forward to in terms of, without saying too much, the UPP campaign?
Well, the UPP campaign has taken many forms.
Yes.
And we've done a lot of things that have been done for the first time.
Yes.
When we brought our virtual public rallies, that was a first for Antigua and Barbuda, and that created its own energy and its own vibe during the COVID, when it was important for us to keep the party out there. So that was an innovation. It worked, kept us going. We had the mass rallies at the earlier part of the year, which was really intended to get our campaign off to a strong start, which we did. Frightened Labour Party. The election that they had intended to hold, they quickly changed their mind as far as that is concerned, because they saw what was coming. Since then, we have been using a variety of other strategies to meet specific demands and requirements of our campaign. So, for example, we have the Sunday mobilizations. Those have been very effective as we go to the different constituencies. The Labour Party is now copying that, and that's what they do. You know, they are always following and copying. But we have done that. It's gone very well. Getting candidates known. You go to constituencies and people want to know who is Anthony Smith, who is Sherfield Bowen, who is Gladys Potter. All the candidates are there, get to meet. It also solidifies and shows the solidarity that exists within the team. And then, of course, the Saturday small business pull-up. That has been sensational. We've had, I think, 8 so far. All of them have gone very well. Of course, we know what happened in the Bolan's community.
I think it was 9.
A total of 9.
Yes.
Okay. We know what happened in Bolan's recently. We were coming through peacefully. The police had already given us permission. The route was already set. But the Labour Party in that constituency decided that they were going to come out, and in an intimidating, aggressive kind of way, they were obviously trying to spoil for a confrontation. We don't want any confrontation with anybody. We don't want any confrontation with anybody. But our people are going to stand up. We have a campaign to run, and we're not going to allow anybody to intimidate us. And so we will be back in Bolan's, because the pull-up on Saturday had to be cut short because the Labour Party folks came out and tried to make trouble. And so in the end, the entire proceedings were brought to a close. But what about those small businesses who were looking forward to the presence of the UPP on Saturday? They were denied the opportunity. So we're going to be back in Bolan's on Saturday, and we expect that, as happened in the previous 9 pull-ups, that we'll have a peaceful, energetic, successful small business pull-up. And I can say to those businesses in Bowlands, look out for us, because we're coming to support you. And we look forward to another very enjoyable engagement with the St. Mary's South constituency.
And before the time is up, we cannot forget the family picnic put on by the Women's Forum on Sunday.
On Sunday. See you at Fry's. We have the Family Fun Day being put on by the Women's Forum, the dynamic Women's Forum of the United Progressive Party. That Sunday, let's come out and enjoy ourselves.
From midday.
From midday. So that's on Sunday.
Yes.
And the pull-up on Saturday will be in Bowlands. And the UPP will continue to roll on, because we expect that this election will mark a change for the nation of Antigua and Barbuda. And we're looking forward to that meaningful change.
Well, meaningful change, that's on the minds of all of us. And we really hope that the change will come sooner rather than later. But that's how we're going to end it tonight on the Captain's Corner. Before we say thank you to our guests who are here and who is here now, we want to say a very special thank you to the many contributors to our program tonight. Of course, all the artifacts you see on set. We say thank you very much to Janet Henry for providing them to us for our display this evening. We also want to say thank you very much to Sweet Treats. It's Anero Delicacies for our plot of land and piece of the rock Sweet Treats, and our drinks, which is Recession Buster and the Get Rid of Them drinks. And we'll certainly sample and let you know really how they feel. And also to Joanne Lewis of Rags to Rugs. Thank you very much for the wonderful piece of work we have at the back here. So to everybody, thank you so very much. Let me also say thank you to Brother Alistair Thomas, who joined us earlier on our discussion on housing and lands. And to you, political leader and Captain Harold Lovell, thank you so very much. You wanted to have the chance to say Happy Independence. Monday, Tuesday is Independence Day.
Yes, this is our last program before Independence. So let me just say Happy Independence to Antigua and Barbuda. And let us look forward to independence next year under a new administration. Next year, 2023. Let us look forward to new independence under the new administration. But happy independence to everyone.
And with that said, all that's left to say good night and happy independence, Antigua and Barbuda. Good night.
Corner, a weekly discussion with the political leader of the United Progressive Party, Harold Lovell. Housing is key to increasing economic mobility, and this Thursday at 8:30 p.m. he will discuss how the UPP will empower the people through greater access to affordable housing and land ownership. There will be a special guest each week to add to these important conversations. Listen via Progressive 107.3 FM, Observer Radio, and any UPP social media channel, and pose your questions. Captain's Corner, bringing light